Part 1. When you start questioning yourself, it begins quietly, not with shouting, not with conflict, but with doubt. A soft rewiring of your memory, your clarity, your sense of truth. And it often comes from someone close, someone who smiles while they say it, someone who says they care, but their words leave you feeling unsure. That's the danger of gaslighting. It doesn't just confuse your thoughts, it makes you question yourself. And when you start questioning yourself, the rest of the world becomes harder to trust. Gaslighting is not a disagreement. It's not someone seeing the world differently. It's someone intentionally working to make you second guess your reality. It's them saying, "I never said that," even when you know they did. It's them calling you crazy, dramatic, too emotional. Every time you bring something real to the surface, over time you begin to wonder if maybe it's just you. Maybe your memory isn't that sharp. Maybe you are overreacting, and that's exactly what they want. Because gaslighting is not about truth, it's about control. It's about rewriting the story while you're still standing in it. It's about making you so unsure of what's real that the only version of reality you can hold on to is theirs. And when that happens, you don't just lose the argument, you start to lose yourself. This episode is not about labeling every disagreement as gaslighting. It's about learning how to respond when someone is actively trying to make you feel unstable. This is about reclaiming your clarity without needing to shout. This is about finding strength in short sentences, in steady words, in presence. Because sometimes the most powerful thing you can say is not loud or long. It's simple, and it ends the game before it even starts. Part 2. The words that end the game. When someone tries to gaslight you, they're not just lying, they're baiting you. They want you to react, they want you to explain. They want you to go back and forth until your truth sounds uncertain and their version starts to feel more solid. That's the trap, and that's why the only way to win is not to play. The more you speak, the more material they have to twist. So the power is not in defending yourself, it's in saying less. It's in choosing words they can't bend, words that close the loop, words that end the game. The first one is this: "That's what I heard." Not, "I swear you said that," not "play the tape back," just "that's what I heard." Because that sentence holds the line without escalating the moment. It tells them that you're standing by your memory without demanding that they agree. You're not asking for validation. You're not opening the door for debate. You're drawing the boundary. And that's why it works. If they respond by saying you misunderstood or that you're making things up, let them. You don't have to follow them there. You just return to the phrase, "That's what I heard." The second phrase is this: "I need someone who's helpful." When the conversation turns personal, when they say you're crazy or you need help or you're overreacting, this is how you hold your ground. You don't fight back. You don't say, "No, I'm not." You don't ask them to explain themselves. You simply say, "I need someone who's helpful." That phrase shifts the focus away from their insult and back to your need. You are telling them without emotion or apology that this kind of energy does not belong here, that they are not contributing to a solution, and when you do that, you make it clear that their words do not define you. Your standard does. The third phrase is this: "I do not imagine facts." This one is stronger. It is for the moment when they say you're imagining things or that what you're describing never happened. This is when you state your certainty. "I do not imagine facts." You don't yell it, you don't whisper it, you say it plainly, because you are not asking permission to trust yourself. You are claiming what you know. And if they keep pressing, if they call you dramatic or defensive or sensitive, you don't answer their label, you don't accept the role they are assigning, you repeat the truth. "I do not imagine facts." Each of these phrases has one thing in common. They are short, they are calm, they are immovable. And that is what makes them powerful. You don't need to shout over a lie, you just need to stop feeding it. You don't need to win the narrative, you just need to hold your ground. And the more predictable you are in your response, the less power they have. When you always come back to the same line, the conversation runs out of places to go. And when they have nothing left to twist, they are left with only the truth, yours. Gaslighting only works when you let the other person pull you away from yourself. But when you stay close to what you know, when you say less and trust it more, you make yourself untouchable. Not because you win the moment, but because you refuse to lose yourself in it. Part 3. What gaslighting really is and isn't. Not every disagreement is gaslighting. Not every conflict is a psychological trap. And not every uncomfortable conversation is manipulation. Sometimes people just remember things differently. Sometimes they're defensive. Sometimes they're wrong. But gaslighting is something else. It is not just about facts. It is about power. It is a slow, strategic attempt to disconnect you from your sense of reality. And when it works, you don't just question the moment, you start questioning yourself. Gaslighting sounds like this. You're imagining things that never happened. You always twist what I say. You're being dramatic. Everyone else sees it my way. And underneath every one of those lines is a message that says, you cannot trust what you saw, what you heard, what you felt. Over time it builds. You hesitate before speaking. You replay conversations in your head. You start asking others to validate things you used to know without a doubt. And that's the goal. Not to win the argument, but to own your confidence. A lot of people misuse the word gaslighting. They use it to describe simple disagreement. They use it in moments of misunderstanding. But gaslighting is not when someone challenges you. It's when they try to erase your version of reality and replace it with their own. It's when they deny something obvious, not because they forgot, but because they want you to forget. It's not about memory. It's about erasure. It's not about miscommunication. It's about control. Imagine this. You and I are sitting across from each other. I'm tapping my pen on the table. You ask me to stop. I say I wasn't tapping. You insist I was. I smile and say you're imagining things. Later I do it again. You react. I deny again. Then I make you feel guilty for bringing it up. That is not a conversation. That is programming. And the longer it continues, the more you begin to feel unsure. Not just about the pen, but about yourself, about your instincts, about everything. That is why gaslighting is dangerous. Because it does not attack what you believe. It attacks your ability to believe. And once that's gone, you can be led anywhere. That's why it often comes from people you trust. People who use connection as a weapon, who tell you they love you while undoing your voice, who tell you they're helping while pushing you off center. And when you react, they call you the problem. They make you feel like the issue is your intensity, your sensitivity, your memory, never their behavior. So let's be clear. Gaslighting is not about who speaks louder. It is about who manipulates deeper. It is not about forgetting. It is about denying what is known. And once you can name it, you can resist it. Because the minute you start trusting what you know again, the power starts to shift, the fog begins to lift, and you begin to come home to yourself. Part 4, the manipulator's strategy. Gaslighting is not random, it is deliberate. It is not a misstep, it is a method. And once you see the pattern, you begin to understand that the person gaslighting you is not just trying to change the story. They are trying to take control of the entire narrative. They are rewriting the past, framing the present, and steering your future by making you question everything you once knew for sure. And they do it in subtle ways, not with force, but with confusion, not with facts, but with fear. Here's how it works. It starts with small denials, harmless things. You say they said something, they say no, they never did. You mention a look on their face. They say you imagined it. And you think maybe they're right, maybe I misread that. Then it grows, you notice patterns. They twist timelines, they say let's go back. That phrase is not a reset, it's a strategy. Because when they go back, they are not remembering, they are rewriting. They are reshaping events in a way that makes you look like the one who misunderstood, and them the one who simply stayed calm. They feed you small lies, not to deceive you quickly, but to wear you down slowly. Each one causes a pause, a hesitation, and that hesitation is the crack they push on. The more you defend yourself, the more ground you give up, because now you're no longer grounded in what happened, you're just chasing clarity. And that's exactly what they want. They want you chasing, like a cat and a laser pointer. Every time you get close to truth, they move the beam. and you keep running. Not because you're weak, but because you're hoping to land on something solid. But with them, nothing ever stays still. And then comes the trap. They act like they care. They frame themselves as the only one who understands you. They say everyone else thinks you're crazy, that they're the only one brave enough to tell you. And in doing so, they isolate you, not with chains, but with comfort, not with walls, but with whispers. And that's the most dangerous part, because now you depend on them for validation, even though they are the ones dismantling your reality piece by piece. They dig emotional holes and then stand back while you fill them. They say things that don't make sense. And when you react, they ask you to explain yourself. And so you do. You defend. You over-explain. You bring up facts. And every time you do, you pick up the shovel and fill the hole they just created. And once that one is filled, they dig another and you do it again and again until you are exhausted and empty and unsure of everything except their version of events. That is the strategy. Confuse, deny, reframe, repeat. Not to get to the truth, but to control what truth even means in your world. And it works not because you are weak, but because you are kind, because you want to understand, because you believe in fixing things. But some conversations are not meant to be fixed. They are meant to be walked away from. And the first step is seeing the game for what it is. Not a misunderstanding, not a moment of tension, but a pattern designed to pull you away from yourself. Once you name the pattern, you break the spell. Because truth does not live in circles, it lives in clarity. And you do not find clarity by running in their maze. You find it by stepping out of it. Par 5, c'est less, stay free. The more you speak, the more they twist. That is the pattern. That is the trap. When you are being gaslit, it's natural to think that if you just explain a little more, if you just clarify your words, if you just walk them through the facts again, then maybe they will finally understand. But gaslighting is not about misunderstanding, it's about control. It's not that they didn't hear you, it's that they want to break you down until you stop trusting what you said in the first place. And every extra word gives them more to use against you. They don't argue with what you mean. They argue with how you said it. They pick one detail and stretch it. They find one timeline gap and magnify it. They change the focus from the core of the truth to the tiniest imperfection in your expression. And now you're defending your tone. You're defending your memory. You're defending your intentions. But what you're no longer doing is standing on what actually matters, because they've pulled you off center. And they do it with precision. The more you give, the more they spin. The more you explain, the more they distort. That is why the most powerful strategy is not giving them more. It's giving them less, not out of fear, but out of strength. You don't owe endless explanations to someone who is not listening to understand. You don't need to prove reality to someone who is committed to reshaping it. You need to say less and stay grounded. You need sentences that close, not ones that open. You need responses that hold the line, not ones that invite debate. That's why the anchor phrases work. That's what I heard. I do not imagine facts. I see it differently. We remember things differently. These are not just clever comebacks. They are boundaries in verbal form. They are firm, calm, and complete. They leave no space for argument. And most importantly, they protect because gaslighting drains you by turning your clarity into a courtroom. You feel like you are always on trial, always having to defend what you know is true, but you are not on trial. You are not under interrogation. You are allowed to trust yourself without convincing anyone else. And when they come back again, when they say that's not what happened, when they accuse you of twisting things, when they ask you to go back and explain one more time, you don't have to engage. You don't have to take the bait. You return to your phrase calmly, evenly, repeatedly. Because consistency is power. When your words do not change, their tactics run out of room to move, and the conversation begins to lose its grip. Saying less is not silence. It is strategic stillness. It is how you reclaim control without raising your voice. It is how you stay present without being pulled. It is not about shutting down. It is about standing up. Because sometimes the most powerful sentence is the one that does not invite another reply. It simply holds the ground. And the moment you stop explaining yourself to someone who never intended to understand you, you begin to hear yourself again, clearly, fully, and without apology. Part 6. When you run out of words, stay with what you know. There comes a moment when the words leave you, not because you're weak, not because you have nothing to say, but because everything you say seems to be used against you, twisted, minimized, ignored. You find yourself repeating, explaining, adjusting, and still nothing lands. And then comes the silence, a silence not born from peace, but from exhaustion. And in that silence, you start to wonder if you're losing the fight. But here's the truth. That moment is not your defeat. It is your opportunity to return to what matters. When the words run out, you don't need more language, you need more clarity. Gaslighters thrive on your need to be understood. They stretch the moment just long enough for you to question if your truth is still valid. They speak with confidence even when they're wrong, and you hesitate even when you're right. But you were never meant to fight for your memory. You were never meant to defend your intuition like it's a courtroom. The moment you feel cornered into explaining your own reality is the moment you stop and remind yourself of one thing. I know what I know. That's the foundation. Not clever words, not new strategies, just the steady return to what you already know to be true. I remember what was said. I remember how it made me feel. I remember what happened. Even if they don't, even if they won't, you do not need to convince them. You only need to stay with that knowing. Here's the mistake most people make. They confuse running out of words with running out of strength. But strength does not always sound like a speech. Sometimes it sounds like repetition. Sometimes it sounds like stillness. Sometimes it sounds like the same calm phrase over and over. I see it differently. I remember it differently. It's okay that you disagree with me. These are not signs of retreat. They are signs of resolve. The kind of resolve that refuses to be dragged into emotional chaos. The kind of resolve that does not chase agreement but stands in truth. You will be tempted to say more, to prove more, to dig for a better way to phrase it. But clarity doesn't come from saying it better. It comes from saying it once and standing on it. And when they push again, when they come back with new angles or louder words, you don't rise to match them. You stay still. You say the same thing because they want you to chase. But you are not chasing, you are anchoring. The most grounded people are not the ones with the most to say. They're the ones who can stay rooted in the middle of confusion and not lose themselves. They are the ones who can repeat the same quiet truth and let it speak louder than all the noise. You don't need to fight for your voice. You need to return to it and trust that when everything else becomes unstable, your own knowing will carry you through. Part 7. When they call you the gaslighter. Sometimes you're not the one losing control. You're the one being accused of it. And that accusation cuts deep because gaslighting is not just a behavior, it's a word that carries weight. It suggests manipulation, dishonesty, emotional harm. And when someone throws it at you in the middle of a disagreement, especially when you're trying to be sincere, it can feel like everything is upside down. You were not yelling. You were not twisting facts. You were just disagreeing. But now they say you're gaslighting them. And suddenly, instead of resolving the issue, you find yourself defending your intentions. The pain comes not just from the argument, but from the distortion of who you are. This is where you need to pause. Because the instinct will be to say, I'm not gaslighting you, or to explain your side again and again. But that usually leads nowhere. It only confirms the accusation in their mind. The more you defend, the more they believe you're covering something up. And that's how the trap is set. A word that was meant to describe real harm is now being used to win an argument. So what do? You don't play defense. You lead from a different posture, curiosity. Instead of denying, you ask, what did you hear when I said that? What made you feel that way? How did that land with you? Because someone who truly wants understanding will be open to exploring. Someone who is simply using the label to silence you won't want to go deeper. And either way, you'll know you are not responsible for someone else's misuse of a serious term, but you are responsible for how you respond to it. And when you respond with calm questions instead of sharp defenses, you regain control of the conversation. You stop being who they say you are, and you return to who you choose to be. The truth is, real gaslighters don't ask, "What did you hear?" They don't say, "Help me understand." They don't invite clarity. They assert their version as the only truth and attack when you push back. But if you are creating space, if you are open to listening, if you are willing to say, "We may remember it differently," then you are not manipulating. You are connecting. Still, even in your best moments, you may be misunderstood. And when that happens, remind yourself of this: someone's misunderstanding of your intent does not define your character. Your actions do. Your presence does. And if you stay steady, if you stay curious, if you stay kind without surrendering your truth, that is more powerful than any label they try to stick on you. Part 8. The exit: how to know when to walk away. Not every conversation deserves a conclusion. Some only exist to pull you further from yourself. And when clarity no longer grows, when your truth is dismissed, no matter how gently you speak it, that's when it's time to leave. Not in anger, not in fear, but in full awareness that your peace matters more than their approval. Walking away is not weakness. It's knowing when staying is no longer a sign of strength. You have tried. You have spoken with calm. You have offered clarity without shouting. But if every word is turned into a weapon, if your presence is used as permission to be disrespected, then silence is not surrender. It is a boundary. And walking away is not giving up. It is holding on to who you are. Gaslighters thrive on your need to stay and fix. But the truth is, some stories aren't broken. They're just false. You don't owe your energy to someone committed to misunderstanding you. You don't owe more words to someone who never valued your first sentence. You don't have to stay in the room where your reality is constantly rewritten. When you exit, you do so with quiet conviction. No drama, no justification, just a calm return to yourself. And once the noise fades, you realize you didn't lose anything. You preserved everything that mattered. Your clarity, your center, your voice. Because strength is not always in staying. Sometimes it's in knowing when enough is enough. If this message resonated with you, don't keep it to yourself. Share it, reflect on it, live it. And if you want more tools to protect your peace and strengthen your voice, follow Daily 1%. Impact for one quiet truth each day that changes everything.